My daughter-in-law called me her maid in front of the whole family. Everyone laughed and I stayed silent. But 3 weeks later, she couldn't laugh anymore. I still remember that night so clearly. The night when the last bit of respect in this house vanished in the sound of others' laughter. The yellow light from the ceiling shone down on the long dining table, covered with a white cloth. The sound of cutlery clinking against plates, the clinking of wine glasses, and amidst the joyful noise, my daughter-in-law's voice rang out, sharp as a knife slicing through flesh.
Oh, everyone, don't worry. I've got my own maid at home. Hell, it's my mother-in-law.
The faces around me tilted with awkward smiles, yet no one spoke up. Marcus, my son, merely furrowed his brows and turned away. I sat still, my hands still holding my glass of water, but my fingers trembling ever so slightly. Those words were like a slap, not just because of the humiliation, but because they came from the very person I had welcomed into this family. I'm Gloria Mitchell, 67 years old, widowed for 10 years. I was once a teacher, dedicating my life to raising my son right. When Marcus brought Vanessa home to introduce her, I was overjoyed to tears. She was beautiful, well-educated, and spoke so sweetly it felt like honey. I thought that God had blessed me with another daughter. But it seems I was wrong. That night, after the guests left, only 3 of us remained in the house. I cleared the plates, wiped the table. Marcus intended to help, but Vanessa pulled him back, whispering just loud enough for me to hear, "Let Mom do it. She likes to clean." I stopped, a feeling of suffocation squeezing my chest. I didn't respond. I just lowered my head and continued my work. I didn't want to turn their first Christmas night into an argument. But deep inside, I knew something had changed forever. In the following days, the coldness between Vanessa and me became more pronounced. She didn't say anything offensive, but every action, every look reeked of disdain. I brewed coffee, and she frowned, saying, "Mom, you put too much sugar. I can't drink this." I folded blankets in the living room, and she said, "Leave that. I'll hire someone to do it." The way she called me Mom felt like a role she was just playing for her husband. I once thought that as you age, you learn to be more humble to keep the peace. But it turned out that humbling yourself before disdain only pushed you into a corner. I began to feel that my house was no longer a place to call home. The familiar objects around me, the wedding photo of my late husband and me, the clock he hung on the wall, the antique teapot I had cherished for decades, now felt like silent witnesses to the growing loneliness inside me. I'm not someone who easily loses my temper. I had taught hundreds of rebellious children without losing patience. But one afternoon, while I was sweeping the yard, Vanessa called out from inside the house, her voice cold like an order. "Mom, the kitchen floor's dirty. Could you clean it?" She didn't look at me, only glanced at the mirror to adjust her hair. I looked up at her for a brief moment, then responded, "Sure, I'll do it." That was the first time in my life I realized that my calmness was no longer a virtue, it was armor. That evening when Marcus came home, I prepared a nice meal as usual. He ate happily, praising his wife's cooking. Vanessa just smiled and said, "Mom made it." Marcus looked a little surprised but said nothing. I just lowered my head and scooped more soup, feeling my heart heavy. My son, the one I loved most, didn't even realize that his mother was slowly being erased from this very home. Late at night, I lay quietly in my room, listening to the laughter of the 2 of them coming from the next room. The light from the hallway shone through the crack in the door, and I suddenly felt tears running down my face. I didn't cry out of sorrow, but because I realized that I was turning into a shadow in the house that once echoed with memories. The next day, I stood in front of the mirror. My hair had turned gray, my dark skin was marked with the signs of age, but my eyes that had once illuminated many classrooms, still shone. It was just that the light was now obscured by my endurance. I looked at myself and wondered, when will they understand the value of what I've done? That afternoon, Vanessa came home late. I was cooking when I overheard her talking on the phone, her voice full of excitement. "Yeah, this year I'll host Christmas at our place. My mother-in-law will take care of everything. No need to hire catering. We'll save so much money." I stopped staring at the simmering soup. The heat from the pot hit my face, and in that moment I understood it wasn't that she didn't know how much I did. She just thought I had to do it. That night I set the table as usual, still smiling as Marcus told stories from his office. Vanessa sat across from me, pouring wine, excitedly talking about her upcoming Christmas plans. She talked about decorating the house, inviting 25 relatives, and throwing the party of a lifetime. I silently listened, nodding, saying nothing. But deep inside, a thought began to form. If she thought I was her maid, maybe it was time to show her what real work was. That evening, I opened the drawer and pulled out my husband's old notebook. Among the words he left behind, one sentence made me stop and think for a long time. "No one will respect you if you don't stand up and protect that respect." I gently closed the notebook, feeling an unusual calm. The next morning, I woke up earlier than usual. The weak sunlight filtered through the curtains, streaming into the small kitchen. I prepared breakfast, the same toasted bread that Marcus liked. When Vanessa came downstairs, I smiled and greeted her as if nothing had happened the night before. She returned a half-hearted smile, holding her phone while ordering, "Mom, remember to make the shopping list. We have a lot of guests." I nodded, my voice calm. "Sure, don't worry, I'll handle it." In my heart, everything had been decided. No more bitterness, no more anger. Just the quiet of someone who understood that sometimes the only way to get revenge is to let others face the consequences of their own actions. When Vanessa turned away, I watched her back, feeling lighter. I didn't know where this would take me, but for the first time in months, I felt like I was still in control of my own life. Her words at the party still echoed somewhere in my mind, like a scar that couldn't be erased. My maid, my mother-in-law. I closed my eyes, sighed, and smiled. If she truly thought I was just her maid, then this time I'd make her understand what real work was. And when Christmas came, she would understand that respect is never something you can take for granted. Since that night, there has been a strange, creeping air in my house, silent yet unmistakable. Gone were the sweet, polite words Vanessa used to win favor. In their place was indifference, coldness, and those skillful commands hidden beneath a sugar-coated tone. She never needed to shout. Just a few softly stressed words from her, and I would understand I was no longer the mistress of this house. Every morning, while I brewed coffee, Vanessa would come downstairs in her beige silk robe, her wavy hair resting perfectly on her shoulders, phone in hand, scrolling. Without looking at me, she would say, "Mother, I don't like this coffee. Next time, change the brand. This one's too cheap." I would glance at her for a second, then simply nod. Each passing day became a test of endurance. She started assigning me tasks I never imagined doing in my own home. Cleaning their bedroom, washing their sheets, scrubbing the bathroom after she left it covered in traces of makeup, hair, and damp towels. I would wipe every water spot from the mirror, and behind me her voice would float, light as a feather. "Mother, make sure you clean it thoroughly. Professional cleaners never miss a spot." I didn't answer. I had learned the art of silence, a silence both bitter and necessary, like a worn cloak that barely hides a torn pride. Marcus left early every morning and came home late every night. To him, the house was always tidy, dinner always waiting. He never wondered who kept it that way. I didn't blame Marcus. As a mother, I understood. He wanted peace, and he believed his wife treated me kindly. Sometimes I caught a flicker of doubt in his eyes when Vanessa spoke to me condescendingly. But all it took was her smile, her touch, and he would soften again. I could only smile, swallowing everything whole. Winter afternoons in Virginia are always chilly. I often stood on the porch, a cup of cold tea in hand, watching the bare trees tremble in the wind. From the upstairs window, I sometimes saw Vanessa on the phone, laughing brightly, confident and proud. She spoke of this house as if it had always belonged to her. My husband takes care of everything, and my mother-in-law just does little chores at home. That sentence, though not meant for me, pierced straight through my heart. One evening, I overheard a small argument between them. Vanessa snapped, "Marcus, you don't understand. Your mother keeps getting involved in everything. It's suffocating." Marcus replied gently, "She's only trying to help. She has no one but us." I stood in the kitchen washing dishes, listening, my heart turning to stone. Vanessa's voice softened. "I know, but sometimes it feels like we're living with a maid, not your mother." I put the dish down, water splashing onto my sleeve. It wasn't the words that shocked me. It was the realization that she truly believed them. In her mind, I was nothing more than a servant, just another part of the background in the grand life she was building. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, faint light filtering through the curtains. Each crack on the wall seemed to whisper memories, the days when Marcus was little, running in the yard, shouting, "Mom, look at me." The nights when my husband and I ate dinner late, and he would say, "One day, this house will be filled with the laughter of our grandchildren." And now, the house was full of laughter indeed, but none of it was for me. Vanessa began hosting small gatherings with her friends. Each time, I became the silent cleaner. She stood in the living room dressed in red, holding a wine glass, smiling flawlessly. I stayed in the corner, collecting empty glasses, refilling trays, wiping spills. Once, I overheard one of her friends whisper, "Is that the new maid?" Vanessa chuckled lightly. "No, that's my mother-in-law. She loves doing it." Laughter filled the room. I stood still, cloth in hand, smiling faintly so no one would see. Perhaps that was the moment I truly understood respect is not something you beg for or wait to be given. It's something you must reclaim. When the guests left, the house reeked of perfume and wine. Vanessa walked past me, glanced at the floor, and said, "Mother, clean it again. We have guests tomorrow. It has to sparkle." I looked up, meeting her gaze. Her eyes were cold, but beneath that chill, I sensed one thing she never believed I would ever resist. I cleaned until midnight, then sat on a chair gazing at the spotless floor glimmering under the lights. Suddenly, I laughed softly, a small, quiet laugh, but deep. She was right. I had been too gentle, too accustomed to enduring. But I was not weak. I had spent my life teaching generations of students about dignity, and now it was time to teach that lesson to someone under my own roof. In the following days, Vanessa grew even more smug. She bragged to her friends about her model mother-in-law who managed everything without complaint. Marcus still left early, came home late sometimes, bringing flowers for his wife, never knowing his mother stood in the shadows, watching, heart aching yet proud. My son was happy, and that made me happy. But who, I wondered, cared about my happiness? One morning, Vanessa placed a long list in front of me. "Mother, can you handle this for me? We'll have around 20 guests for Christmas." "You're better at shopping." She said it casually, then walked away, leaving behind her expensive perfume lingering in the air. I looked down at the list: turkey, wine, pastries, flowers, decorations, tablecloths, and smiled faintly. She didn't realize that every word, every gesture of hers was weaving the very plan I had begun forming. A simple plan, but one that would let her taste exactly what she had made me feel. I began preparing, not for Vanessa's Christmas party, but for my own departure. In the days that followed, I stayed quiet, still working, still smiling when she gave orders. But inside, I was arranging everything neatly, step by step. I knew that to make someone understand the value of respect, sometimes you must leave the place where they've grown too used to seeing you. That night, I looked at my husband's photo on the shelf. I whispered, "My dear, it's time I teach her the lesson I once taught my students to cherish others." Under the dim light, the photo seemed to smile back at me. I closed my door gently, feeling a strange calm. Outside, snow had begun to fall, blanketing the roof in white. Everything was silent, save for the faint whistle of the wind through the cracks. In the darkness, I knew the moment to rise had come very near. That winter came earlier than usual, and cold winds whipped against the glass windows, carrying the scent of snow and the faint salt of the faraway sea. I still rose early as always, brewed tea, set the table, polished every crystal cup Vanessa liked. The house looked peaceful, but inside me, something restless was stirring, as if I were waiting for a moment whose shape I could already feel, though I didn't yet know what it would bring. One morning, Vanessa came down from her room, her face bright in a way I hadn't seen in weeks. "Mother," she said, her voice brimming with excitement, "this year I want to host a grand Christmas party. I've invited around 30 people, all Marcus's friends and business partners. Everyone's so eager to meet you. You don't mind helping me with the arrangements, do you?" I looked up at her dazzling smile, that practiced one she wore like jewelry, and replied softly, "Of course, dear. I'd be happy to." Vanessa clapped her hands and began listing everything she wanted: a premium roast turkey, Italian wine, traditional pudding, a towering Christmas tree in the center of the living room, and a cascade of golden lights across the porch. She spoke quickly, as if everything had already been decided and I was merely there to carry it out. I smiled, noting down every word carefully. But in my mind, another plan was slowly taking shape, not about how to host the perfect party, but how to make Vanessa understand that no one can stand on top of others forever and still keep peace in their heart. From that day on, I began preparing. I ordered the ingredients, planned the decorations, but every step was deliberate, precise. I was not hurried, not angry. Each motion of mine was calm, steady, as if stitching the final thread into a tapestry I had long imagined. Vanessa, meanwhile, grew more frantic as Christmas drew near. She called caterers, ordered more ornaments, tried on dresses, practiced her smile in the mirror, posting every moment online. I watched her in the kitchen holding her phone, laughter filling the air. "Everyone's going to be so impressed," she said. "This Christmas will be the most memorable one yet." I kept working quietly behind her, but in my heart, the pieces of my plan were locking into place. That evening, I cleaned the kitchen alone, the yellow light casting soft shadows on the walls. I remembered what my late husband once told me. Sometimes, the best way to make someone see your worth is to let them feel your absence. I nodded slightly, as if answering a voice carried from another time. 3 days before Christmas, snow began falling heavily. I wrapped Marcus's gift, a gray scarf I had knitted over the past month. My son still didn't see the quiet battle forming between the two women in his life. He still thought all was well, that his wife was charming and his mother gentle. I didn't blame him, but I knew that soon every veil must drop. Vanessa paced the house, pointing out orders like a conductor. Mother, please clean that window again. Marcus's sister will be here. Don't let there be any dust. Mother, make sure to marinate the turkey early. I don't want the guests waiting. Mother, the tree looks better by the fireplace. Move it there. She didn't realize that each demand she made only deepened my calm because it made my plan that much more complete. On the evening of the 23rd, Marcus came home late, tired but cheerful. He kissed his wife lightly on the forehead. "You've done great. Everyone says you're such a thoughtful hostess." Vanessa giggled. "Thanks to Mom. You should thank her properly." Marcus turned to me, warmth in his eyes. "Thank you, Mom." "You've done so much." I nodded, my chest tightening. "Thank you." Two words that felt both sweet and bitter. The next morning, I woke early as usual, but instead of tying my apron, I sat at the kitchen table and wrote a few short lines on a piece of paper. I placed it in the drawer where Vanessa kept her daily to-do lists. Then I put on my coat and stepped outside. The cold bit through my gloves, but my heart was oddly warm. I walked along the snowy streets, watching families hang ornaments, lights flickering on porches, children laughing as they caught snowflakes on their tongues. I thought perhaps this would be the first Christmas in years I spent for myself. That afternoon, Vanessa's calls came one after another, but I didn't answer. I knew she would panic when she realized I was gone. No one was there to cook, to clean, to check the timing of the roast, to arrange the table just right. By the time Marcus returned, I imagined he would find his wife flustered, overwhelmed, surrounded by half-done dishes and cold plates. I pictured her in the kitchen, lost, not knowing where to start. For the first time, she would feel what it was like to be disregarded in her own home. That evening, I arrived at my old friend Helen's house, a retired teacher like me. She opened the door, her eyes widening at the sight of me standing there in the snow with a small suitcase. "Gloria, my goodness, what happened?" I smiled. "Nothing happened, Helen. I just needed a few quiet days, a peaceful Christmas." She didn't press further. She just handed me a cup of hot tea, and together we sat by the window watching the snow fall. It had been so long since I felt such stillness. No commands, no scolding, no condescension, just peace. That night I turned on my phone. Over 10 missed calls from Marcus, 3 messages from Vanessa. The last one read simply, "Mother, I'm sorry. Please come home." I stared at those words for a long time. I didn't know if it was genuine remorse or the panic of someone who had lost control. But I knew that for the first time, Vanessa had been forced to lower her head. I didn't reply right away. I closed my eyes instead, listening to the wind brushing the window and the soft scent of ginger tea in the air. I used to believe kindness could change people. Now I understand. Sometimes you must let others face the emptiness they created before they can see your value. The next morning, Marcus texted me, "Mom, I'm sorry. Vanessa understands now. She cried all night. Please come home. The house isn't the same without you." I put the phone down and looked outside, where the sun blazed over the snow, turning everything into gold. I knew this wasn't the end, but inside me, the storm had finally calmed. And somewhere, for the first time, Vanessa might be learning how to live with gratitude. I smiled faintly. That Christmas at last carried its true meaning, not in lights or luxury, but in the quiet moment when someone finally rediscovers what it means to be thankful, even if it comes a little late. I never believed that revenge was the only way to find justice. But sometimes, if you stay silent for too long, others will think you have no emotions. And Vanessa is exactly that type of person. The more you give in, the more she takes. After our conversation about the Christmas party, I maintained my calm demeanor as if nothing had happened. Every morning I woke up early, made coffee for Marcus, prepared breakfast for the family, smiled when Vanessa passed by, and exchanged the usual pleasantries. No one would suspect that right in these silent moments, a meticulous plan was gradually being put into place. I started by booking a flight. The trip was set to depart on Christmas morning, just when the party was supposed to take place, and Vanessa would need me more than ever. I chose Charleston as my destination, where my old friend Mrs. Helen lives. She once told me, "If one day you feel tired, come here. There's sun, the sea, and the peace you've lost." I never thought I'd actually go, but this time I knew the time had come. I didn't tell anyone. Whenever Vanessa entered the kitchen, I pretended to be busy with her shopping list, nodding along as she directed. I quietly packed my things into small bags, hiding them behind an old suitcase in the closet. Every night while knitting scarves, I imagined her face when she realized I was gone. No one to clean up, no one to prepare, no one to fix things for her anymore. Not because I wanted to see her suffer, but because I wanted her to understand that respect is not something that comes naturally. Vanessa was still oblivious. She was busy with grand plans, decorating the tree, choosing dresses, taking photos for social media. Her sparkling pictures were full of captions about love and togetherness, leaving me unsure whether to laugh or pity her. Every time I saw her take pictures, smiling for the camera like the happiest woman alive, all I saw was a perfect shell hiding the arrogance within. One evening, Marcus came home late. He was tired, but still managed to smile when he saw the dinner I had prepared. "Thanks, Mom. You're still the one who makes this house feel the warmest," he said. I smiled, hiding the lump in my throat. He didn't know that dinner might be one of the last I would ever cook in this kitchen. "Marcus," I said slowly, "if one day I go far away, will you be all right?" He laughed, thinking I was joking. "Where would you go, Mom? You're the pillar of this house." I nodded, smiled lightly, and said no more. In the following days, I still helped Vanessa with her shopping, still gave my suggestions when she asked, still acted enthusiastic about the party plans. She gradually believed that I had truly calmed down. Sometimes I heard her laugh and talk with Marcus. "I think your mom has finally understood. She's happy now. Everything she does is with joy, so she must not be mad at me anymore." Marcus nodded, probably relieved. I stood behind the door listening, and in my heart there was only a strange sense of tranquility. On the morning of Christmas Eve, Vanessa pulled me aside at the breakfast table, her voice sweeter than usual. "Mom, I know you've been upset with me, but I really want this Christmas to be the most memorable one. I want everyone to see our house as happy and warm. Do you understand?" I looked deep into her eyes and saw a genuine hint of worry mixed with pride. I nodded. "Of course I understand." She smiled brightly, then turned back to her plan. I also smiled, but in my heart, that calmness felt like the still waters before a storm. That night, I opened my suitcase and packed everything once again. Everything was ready: the flight ticket, my handbag, the gift for my friend, and a small note I would leave behind. I wrote neatly, "Merry Christmas." Sometimes people only realize someone's worth when they have to do everything on their own. Love, Mom. When I finished the note, my heart raced, not out of fear, but because freedom was so close. For so many years, I had lived for others. For my son, for the family, for harmony. For the first time in a long time, I chose to live for myself. On the 24th, Vanessa started her hustle early in the morning. The sound of the phone, her instructions, the scraping of chairs and clattering objects, the house was like a beehive. I calmly made breakfast, poured coffee for Marcus, and smiled when Vanessa walked in. "Mom, remember to get up early tomorrow. I need you to help with preparations starting at 8, she said while jotting down notes. I responded lightly, "All right, I'll take care of everything." When she turned her back, I glanced at the calendar on the wall. just one more day. That night, after everyone had gone to bed, I went outside onto the porch. The sky was filled with snow, and the Christmas lights reflected off the white, glittering ground. I sat on a wooden chair, looking around the house I had lived in for nearly 10 years, the one that once held laughter and warmth before Vanessa's coldness and arrogance turned it into a strange place. I closed my eyes, taking a deep breath. In that moment, I didn't feel anger, I didn't feel hatred. It was just a fleeting sadness, like smoke. I understood that leaving wasn't about revenge, but about liberation for both of us. The next morning, I woke up earlier than usual. I prepared the last breakfast, placed it on the table, folded my apron, and then carried my suitcase to the door. Everything was quiet, except for the ticking of the clock. Before leaving, I paused in front of the family photo hanging on the wall. The picture was taken 3 years ago when Vanessa had just married Marcus. Back then, she smiled brightly, holding her husband's hand tightly. I also smiled genuinely. I gently touched the frame and whispered, "Merry Christmas, Vanessa." "This time, you'll have to set your own table." Then I stepped outside. The cold air hit my face, snapping me to full awareness. The snow was gently falling, each flake like a quiet memory melting softly on my coat. I pulled up the collar, heading toward the bus station. Each step on the snowy ground felt like a whisper from the past, and I knew I was stepping into a new chapter. Behind me, the house remained lit. I didn't look back. In my heart, the calmness had become the strongest weapon. The storm was coming, but this time, I wouldn't be the one facing it. The last 3 days before Christmas, the house became a grand stage with Vanessa as the director of everything. She was constantly moving, giving orders, pointing fingers as if everyone were her servant. The smell of baked goods, sauces, and scented wax filled the air, making the space feel suffocating. "Mom, remember to make the roasted chicken like last year. All my guests loved that dish," Vanessa said while checking the guest list. "Yes," I replied, my voice light as a breeze. "And remember to clean the living room that morning. I want the floors to be spotless when everyone arrives. Oh, and the tablecloth should be white lace, not the old cream-colored one. You remember, right?" "Got it. Don't worry." Vanessa didn't notice that I was folding clothes, packing them into a small suitcase under the bed. She probably thought it was just old blankets. I didn't feel the need to explain. Each yes now wasn't about obedience. It was about laying the final bricks for the path I was about to take. Marcus was still busy going to work from early morning to late evening. He thought his mom was happy to have the family together for the holidays, not realizing that each day I counted down in my heart. He still said, "Mom, this year will be great. My wife wants to make it really big." I just smiled and responded with the gentle look he had grown used to. The kitchen slowly turned into a battlefield. Vanessa tried one dish after another, arranging things on the table, frowning when something didn't meet her standards. She adjusted each glass, every ribbon on the tree. "No, this corner needs more lights. The lighting's uneven," she snapped. "Mom, don't put the plates there. It looks bad." I nodded and rearranged everything just as she asked. Inside, there were no more storms, only the calm of someone who had seen it all. On the evening of the 23rd, when everything seemed settled, Vanessa suddenly changed her plans. She wanted to add a few new dishes, French desserts, imported sparkling wine, and a photo area for guests. She sat in the living room, phone in hand, calling around, her voice full of authority. "Mom, I need you to help with the desserts, okay? I don't want to hire anyone. Making them myself will be more meaningful." "Sure," I said, still folding shirts. She looked up a bit surprised at my calmness. "Mom, you're different lately, so calm. I'm glad you're feeling more relaxed." I smiled. Yes, Sometimes calm is the only choice we have. She smiled lightly, not quite understanding what I had just said. That night, the snow fell heavier, each flake landing on the roof, blanketing the path. I sat by the window, watching the Christmas lights flicker on the wall. Music from the living room echoed Silent Night, Holy Night. The familiar song, yet somehow so distant. I glanced at the plane ticket hidden under my notebook. Everything was ready. I just had to wait for the right moment. On the morning of the 24th, Vanessa woke up early, her hair neatly styled, wearing a bright red dress, holding her phone, taking pictures of the Christmas tree. Fantastic. This year's party will make everyone amazed, she said loudly, not noticing me standing silently in the corner of the kitchen. I looked at her, seeing the eager excitement of someone living in their own world, a world where everything had to be perfect, where she was the center of every gaze. She turned around. Mom, remember to get up early tomorrow. I want everything ready by 8. Don't forget to thaw the chicken, prepare the sauce, and clean the windows again. Got it. I'll remember, I replied, pouring coffee, my smile unchanged. In the afternoon, Marcus came home carrying a large gift bag. He set it on the table, smiling brightly. This Christmas is going to be amazing. Vanessa, you're the woman of the holiday season. She beamed, kissing him lightly on the cheek. Wait and see. Everyone will remember this party. I looked at them, my heart aching. I had once dreamed my son would be happy, and perhaps in some way he truly was happy. It's just that I no longer belonged to that happiness. On the night of the 24th, when everyone was asleep, I quietly checked my luggage one last time. Everything was neatly packed. I left a note in the kitchen drawer next to the shopping list Vanessa had written. Then I turned off the lights and stepped onto the balcony. The snow was falling heavily, covering the roof, the tree branches, and the twinkling Christmas lights. I looked up at the sky, feeling the cold seep through my coat collar. In that moment, I felt light like the snow. The next morning, when the clock struck 6, I woke up, put on my thick coat, and grabbed my suitcase heading for the door. The first light of the day lit up the doorstep, and everything was so quiet that I could hear my own heartbeat. I stopped before the door, looking around the house one last time. The scent of cinnamon and vanilla still lingered in the air, the familiar Christmas scent, but now it only made me feel lost. I wrote a few more lines on the paper. Don't look for me. Go ahead and organize the party your way. I'm just taking a little break. Merry Christmas. I folded the paper neatly and placed it in the drawer. Then I walked outside. The cold air hit my face, but I felt at ease. Each step felt like shedding a heavy burden. I called a taxi, looking back at the house through the window of the car. The kitchen light was still on, reflecting through the window where I had spent years cooking, cleaning, enduring. Now it would have to manage without me. I arrived at the airport, holding my ticket, my heart filled with an indescribable feeling, both excited and liberated. I had never done something so bold in my life. They might be angry, Marcus might be disappointed, Vanessa might lose her temper, but I knew I couldn't stay another day while still holding on to my self-respect. As for Vanessa, she was probably still sleeping, unaware that everything she had relied on was about to vanish in just a few hours. I imagined her waking up, walking to the kitchen, seeing my note, neat handwriting, simple but as heavy as a stone. She would be stunned, panicked, and then she would understand one thing. Everything she had taken for granted only existed because someone else quietly carried the burden. The plane started to taxi down the runway. I looked out the window, watching the sunlight break through the mist on the tarmac. In that moment, I closed my eyes and smiled. Christmas was coming, And for the first time in many years, I would celebrate it my way. Behind me in that house, a storm was about to begin. That morning, the pale light of winter filtered through the window, casting a cold glow over the kitchen. Vanessa woke up early, full of energy, her hair tied up, wearing a red apron with a Christmas tree design. She whistled quietly as she turned on the oven, ready to begin a day she believed would be the highlight of the year. But only a few minutes later, her face shifted from bright to confused. The kitchen was eerily quiet. There was no sound of running water, no smell of coffee, no sign of the woman who always got up before dawn to prepare everything. Vanessa frowned and looked around. "Gloria," she called, her voice tinged with irritation. No one answered. She walked through the living room, then entered her mother-in-law's bedroom. The bed was empty, the blankets neatly folded, the wardrobe open and empty. Vanessa stood frozen for a few seconds, trying to understand what was happening. Then she saw a folded piece of paper on the kitchen table among the plates and unfinished tablecloth. "Merry Christmas, Vanessa. This year I'm leaving everything in your hands. Love, Gloria." Just 8 lines, but it was like a knife cutting through the peaceful Christmas morning air. Vanessa grabbed the paper, her heart racing. She read it again, then exclaimed, "No way!" In her mind, a flood of thoughts tangled together. Where did she go? Why today of all days? Was Gloria doing this on purpose? She bit her lip, trying to suppress the rising anger. She immediately called Marcus, but he was still asleep. "Marcus, where did your mom go?" He groggily answered, "Where did she go? She probably just stepped out to buy some more stuff." "No, she's gone. Her luggage is gone too. Do you hear me? Your mom's gone." Marcus sat up, his voice tense. "What do you mean? Are you sure?" Vanessa held up the note, her voice trembling with anger. "I'm sure she left this. What does leaving everything in your hands mean? I can't believe this." Marcus stood silently for a few seconds. He put on a shirt and walked downstairs, looking around as though he couldn't believe his eyes. The house, usually so neat, now felt empty, lacking the familiar warmth. On the table was the half-finished tray of cookies Gloria had planned to make the day before. He picked up the note and read it slowly. "Merry Christmas, Vanessa," he sighed. "Maybe she just wanted to rest. She's done so much, you know." "Rest? Do you know what day it is?" Vanessa nearly screamed. "Today's the day the guests are coming. My parents, your friends, and the neighbors. Who's going to cook? Who's going to clean? Who's going to do all of this?" Marcus looked at his wife somewhat awkwardly. "Well, we'll do it together. It's not a big deal." Vanessa laughed bitterly. "Not a big deal. Do you think I can do all of this alone? And your mom? She's gone, left me here all by myself." The doorbell rang. They both jumped. Vanessa took a deep breath, fixed her hair, and tried to regain composure. "The guests are here. You go greet them." Marcus opened the door, forcing a smile. Outside, the cold wind blew strongly, and a few snowflakes landed on the guests' shoulders. "Hello, Marcus. Merry Christmas." One of his friends cheered, holding a gift. "Hello, come in," he said, but his voice lacked warmth. Vanessa rushed into the kitchen, trying to act as though everything was under control. She opened the oven, threw some frozen chickens inside, and cranked the temperature up high. But within 20 minutes, the smell of burning began to spread. She coughed and opened the oven, smoke billowing out. Damn it, she lowered the heat, trying to salvage the meal. The guests in the living room began murmuring. "Where's Gloria? Last year she made that amazing roasted chicken," a woman asked. Vanessa forced a smile. "My mother-in-law, well, she's taking a break. This year I wanted to do everything myself." Oh, really? That's wonderful, someone else said, not knowing that Vanessa was sweating behind the scenes. Marcus stepped in and saw his wife panicking in the kitchen. He tried to help, but Vanessa waved his hand away. Don't, let me do it. Your mom wanted to see how I would handle this, right? I'll show her. He remained silent. All that day, the noise, the smoke, and the smell of burning filled the house. Vanessa tried to cook everything on the list, but everything was a mess. The sauce was too salty, the cake burned, the salad dry and tough. Marcus continuously received questioning looks from guests. Is your mom okay? Why haven't we seen her? He could only smile awkwardly. By noon, as the guests' laughter blended with the clattering of dishes, Vanessa nearly collapsed. She slumped into a chair, her hands covered in flour, her hair a mess. Inside, anger and humiliation mixed together. Marcus came over, placed a hand on her shoulder. Take a break. Don't worry. No one's blaming you. Vanessa looked at him, eyes red. No, I can't. Your mom did this to me. She did it on purpose. Don't you see? What are you talking about? She knew how important today was. And she left me alone in the middle of this mess. This is punishment, Marcus. She's teaching me a lesson. Marcus looked down at the note still in his pocket, his heart heavy. Maybe she just wanted you to understand how it feels. Vanessa laughed bitterly. How does she feel? What about me? I'm suffering too. The doorbell rang again. This time it was Vanessa's parents. Her mother walked in, looking around the house, frowning, when she saw the pile of dirty dishes in the sink. Sweetie, what happened? Why does the kitchen look like a battlefield? Vanessa bit her lip, holding back tears. It's fine, Mom. It's just my mother-in-law went away. Her mother shook her head, sighed, and silently rolled up her sleeves to help clean. Several other guests started helping too, washing dishes and rearranging the table. No one said anything, but everyone understood that the perfect Christmas dinner Vanessa had boasted about was now nothing more than a mess. By the afternoon, after the guests had eaten, the laughter died down and only the sound of wind howling outside remained. Vanessa sat absent-mindedly looking around. The Christmas tree still glowed brightly, but for her, the lights now seemed to mock her. Marcus sat next to her, his voice soft as a breeze. See, your mom is only human. She's been doing everything by herself for so long. Maybe today she wanted you to understand that in order to make everything perfect, someone has to silently sacrifice. Vanessa didn't respond. She looked down at her hands, scratched and covered in grease. Gloria's voice echoed in her mind. Sometimes calm is the only choice we have. Now she understood. Calm wasn't weakness. It was when someone decided they wouldn't carry the burden anymore. The Christmas night passed in silence. When the guests had left, the house became cold and empty. Vanessa stepped out onto the balcony, looking at the falling snow, her heart suddenly heavy. Gloria, she whispered, I understand now. Outside, the Christmas lights reflected on the white snow, shimmering through the window like broken fragments of memories. Inside that house, everything seemed to stay the same, but from the moment that note was placed on the table, nothing would ever be the same again. The scene in the house now looked like an actual battlefield. Children were screaming, plates were clattering against each other, and the smell of burnt roasted chicken filled the kitchen. Vanessa stood in the middle of the chaos, her eyes wide, so confused that she couldn't find the words. She tried to force a smile when Marcus's guests walked in, but the smile was distorted and weary. Everyone could sense the oddness. There was no longer the delicious scent of food from previous years, no longer the warm laughter of Gloria inviting everyone to the table. Instead, there was forced tension and disorder. One of Vanessa's relatives quietly asked, "Where's Gloria? Last year she made that amazing chicken." Vanessa bit back her anger. "My mother-in-law went to rest for a bit. She wanted me to handle Christmas this year." The woman smiled. "Oh, that's nice, but it seems like the chicken's burnt." The casual remark felt like a dagger to Vanessa's pride. She hurried back to the kitchen, opened the oven, and smoke billowed out. A rush of hot air hit her face, causing her to stumble back and cough violently. "Oh my God," she yelled, tears streaming from the smoke. The kitchen was now a mess. Lettuce scattered everywhere, sauce splattered across the table, the chicken charred black, the soup pot spilled over. Vanessa wiped her tears, trying to calm herself. "I can do this. I will do this," she whispered to herself, but her hands were trembling. Marcus walked in, intending to help, but she waved him off. "Go outside. I'll handle it." "Vanessa, come on, you're overdoing it." "No, I won't let them see me fail. I won't let them think I can't do it like your mom." Her voice wavered with anger and hurt. Marcus stood still, not knowing what to say. He watched his wife struggle amidst the burnt food, his heart full of sympathy and sorrow. In the living room, the whispers began to spread. Children ran around knocking over the Christmas tree. Ornaments shattered across the floor. A male guest tried to salvage the situation by turning on music, but the static only made the atmosphere heavier. "Vanessa, do you have any more cake?" someone called. "Just a minute," she shouted back, her voice sharp. She panted, sweat streaming down her face despite the cold outside. Her hands were covered in grease, her hair a tangled mess, her face smudged. She looked into the kitchen mirror and saw herself, a woman utterly exhausted, far from the elegant image she always tried to maintain. Marcus entered again, placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. "Vanessa, stop. You're hurting yourself." "You talk like I want this. I didn't think everything would be this hard," she said, her voice catching. "I just wanted this party to be perfect, like last year, like every year your mom made it." "That's exactly what your mom wanted you to understand," Marcus said quietly. "That perfection doesn't come easily. Have you ever noticed how hard she worked to keep everything warm?" Vanessa remained silent. A strange feeling stirred inside her, shame and pain intertwined. All this time, she had taken Gloria's thoughtfulness for granted. A part of her even thought it was her duty. But now, standing in this chaotic kitchen, she understood the weight of the word sacrifice. The fridge door popped open, and a tray of cakes fell to the floor, smashing. She stood there watching tears streaming down her face. Outside, children were crying, and adults shouted, "Oh my, why isn't there any food yet?" Vanessa rushed out, trying to stay calm. "It'll be ready soon, please bear with me." One man laughed awkwardly. "It's okay, but I think the chicken smells a little odd." She bit her lip, the feeling of humiliation rising in her throat. She forced a smile, but inside, everything seemed to be falling apart. By the afternoon, as the party was winding down, no one could keep up the festive atmosphere. Children cried from hunger, and the adults began to get up, asking to leave early. One guest whispered to Marcus, "Poor Vanessa, she looks so tired. Without Gloria, it seems like everything is really hard." Marcus nodded slightly, his eyes distant. He knew his mom didn't leave because she was angry, but because she wanted to teach his wife a lesson that words could never express. When the last door closed, the house fell into silence. Only the wind howled outside, and the Christmas lights flickered faintly. Vanessa sat down on the floor, leaning against the cupboard, her eyes empty. On the table, Gloria's card still lay there, its paper slightly bent, almost as if it was smiling mockingly. She picked it up and read it again. Merry Christmas, Vanessa. This year, I'm leaving everything in your hands. Each word carried its own weight, growing heavier in her heart. Leaving everything in your hands. That phrase had now become a huge burden. Everything in your hands wasn't just cooking, it was taking responsibility, keeping the peace, and being the connector. She remembered those times when Gloria set the table, quietly smiled when she complained, folded the blankets, cleaned the house, cooked dinner. Everything was done so quietly that she never paid attention. Now, trying to do just a fraction of that work, she realized it wasn't just labor, it was love. Vanessa slumped her head onto the table, tears falling on the paper. "You've won, Gloria," she whispered, her voice breaking. "I understand now." Marcus came over, sat beside her, and gently took her hand. "No one wins or loses, Vanessa. Mom just wanted you to see what she's been through." She looked up at him, her eyes tired but less angry. "I see now, and I see how terrible I've been. I treated her like a maid, not understanding that she was the one holding this family together." Marcus remained silent, simply tightening his grip on her hand. They sat there looking at the flickering candle on the table. Outside, the snow fell heavily, covering the path. In that moment, Vanessa realized that some lessons couldn't be learned through words, but could only be understood through loneliness and failure. That night, when she went to bed, she couldn't sleep. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Gloria's calm face, her calloused but warm hands, and the way she smiled despite being looked down upon. She didn't know where Gloria was, but inside she whispered to herself, "Thank you, Gloria. Thank you for leaving so that I could learn to appreciate what I once took for granted." Outside, the snow still fell, the wind still blew. In that house, which had just gone through a Christmas nightmare, something had changed. A silence that was no longer cold, but the beginning of a lesson deeply learned for life. I clearly remember the moment I set foot at Miami Airport. The warm air filled my lungs, and the salty sea breeze mingled with the air, a stark contrast to the bitter cold of where I had just left. I pulled my small suitcase with nothing but a few sets of clothes, an old notebook, and a slightly frayed family photo. I didn't bring much because all I needed was peace. 3 weeks ago, when I began planning to leave, I thought I might hesitate, that motherly love would keep me behind. But strangely, on Christmas morning, when I saw the clock strike 6 and heard the church bells ringing from afar, my heart felt only relief. I wrote a note for Vanessa, placed it on the kitchen table, and quietly left the house like a shadow. No one knew. No tears, no clinging. Now I'm sitting in a small room overlooking the sea in Florida. The sound of the waves lapping rhythmically is like a lullaby to my soul. I made myself a cocktail, took a sip, and savored the sweet, sour taste on my tongue. For the first time in years, I felt truly at ease. No shouting, no orders, no disdainful looks. Just me, the sea, and the wind. That afternoon, I walked down to the beach. People around me were laughing and chatting, holding ice cream or carrying pull floats. No one paid attention to the middle-aged woman sitting quietly under the shade of a palm tree. I sat there watching the waves crash against the shore, reflecting on my life about how I had sacrificed everything for my family. I had been a devoted wife, a dedicated mother, and now I was learning how to be a free person. In that moment, Vanessa's image unexpectedly flashed in my mind. I imagined her struggling in the chaotic kitchen, trying to smile in front of guests while wanting to scream out of frustration. I didn't feel joy. I felt pity. Perhaps someone like Vanessa needed a shock to understand the value of others. I had been like her, always thinking I was strong, until life taught me the lesson of humility. In the evening, I walked along the beach. The sun was setting, leaving behind streaks of red and orange as if blending into the waves. I saw a few children running on the sand, laughing happily, while their parents sat watching them with affectionate eyes. The scene made me smile gently. I remembered, Marcus remembered the years when he was little, always running after me, asking to be carried. I wondered, would my son ever recognize the truth behind my actions today? Would he understand that I didn't leave out of anger, but because I wanted to give everyone a chance to reflect? That evening, I called an old friend named Ellen, someone who had long advised me to rest and live for myself. "Did you really do it?" she laughed over the phone. I laughed too, feeling lighter than ever. I think I finally learned how to love myself. Ellen paused for a few seconds, then spoke in a warm voice. "Gloria, you deserve that. Sometimes silence and leaving are the strongest answers." After the call, I went out to the balcony. The night had fallen, and the deep blue sea reflected the moonlight, shimmering like broken mirrors. I closed my eyes and listened to the wind, whispering as if telling old stories. Inside, I felt something strange, both free and melancholic. Perhaps after all, I was still a mother. Even though I had been insulted, even though I had been looked down upon, I still couldn't completely resent them. I just wanted them to understand that kindness has its limits. The next morning, while I was having breakfast at a small seaside cafe, I heard the song "Have Yourself a Merry Little Christmas" playing. I couldn't help but chuckle. "This really is a small Christmas," I whispered, "but it's my Christmas." I opened my phone and saw a few unread messages, all from Marcus. He wrote, "Mom, where are you? Vanessa is crying. I don't know what to do." I didn't reply immediately. I set the phone down, closed my eyes, took a deep breath, and then sent just one sentence. "When you truly understand what I've done, you'll know how to find me." I knew that at home, it must be chaos. Vanessa would have to face the unwashed dishes, the burnt oven, and the uncomfortable looks from the guests. She would feel the pressure I had endured all these years when people thought maintaining the family was a given, not a sacrifice. And Marcus, he would be the first to witness the empty space his mother had left. Perhaps only then would he understand that love isn't blind obedience, but respect. Later in the afternoon, I returned to the beach. The old cocktail was still in my hand, but today it tasted different. It was no longer the taste of revenge, but of freedom. I watched the seagulls soaring in the sky, listened to the sound of the waves crashing against the rocks, my heart as light as a cloud. In that brief moment, I realized I didn't need to prove anything anymore. The lesson had begun, and now I just had to wait for it to take effect. That night, I wrote a few lines in my notebook. No one is born to be the foundation for others. Whether as a mother, a wife, or a daughter-in-law, everyone deserves respect. Sometimes leaving in silence is the strongest way to teach someone to appreciate. I put the pen down and closed the notebook. Outside, the wind still blew, and the waves still crashed against the shore as if they had never stopped. I whispered to myself, my voice as light as a breath, "Gloria, this Christmas is yours." And for the first time in many years, I felt truly at peace inside. I returned to that house on a peaceful afternoon when the late winter sun cast a golden hue over the trees. The taxi stopped in front of the gate, and I took a deep breath. 3 weeks had passed, yet standing in front of this house still made my heart race, a place that once held so many memories, but also suffocated me. I opened the gate and stepped inside. The front yard was covered in dry leaves, the wooden door slightly ajar, and the faint smell of old food mixed with a hint of burning. Everything seemed abandoned for several days. I called softly, "Vanessa." No answer. Only the silent ticking of the wall clock and weak light streaming through the curtain. When I entered the living room, I froze. The once polished room was now messy Christmas decorations still scattered everywhere. Red ribbons, tangled half-burnt candles, leaving long wax streaks on the table, and broken glasses lying all over the floor. In the corner of the room, Vanessa was sitting with her head bowed, her hair disheveled, and her face so gaunt I almost didn't recognize her. Hearing me, she looked up. Her eyes were stunned, then slowly turned to an expression of deep shame. "Mom, you're back." Her voice was hoarse and weak, as if she hadn't slept in days. I placed my bag down, looked around briefly, and replied softly, "I'm back." I didn't scold or ask questions. I quietly stepped forward, picked up a broken glass, placed it back on the table, and then sat down across from her. The atmosphere was thick with silence, so intense that I could hear the wind howling outside the window. Vanessa lowered her head, her hands tightly clasped together. "Mom, I'm sorry," she said, her voice trembling. "I didn't know how much you did. That Christmas, I couldn't control anything." Everything was a mess. The guests complained, Marcus was angry, and I just wanted to disappear. "I understand now. No one can do what you did." I looked at her for a long time. There was no longer the arrogance in her eyes, no longer that way she looked at me as if I were just a servant. Instead, I saw a tired woman who had truly come to realize her limits. "It's okay," I said gently, then poured her a glass of water. "I don't want revenge. I just want you to understand. Respect is never something that's given naturally." Vanessa broke into tears. The tears flowed, carrying both regret and shame. "I was so wrong. I made you endure things that I couldn't even bear for a single day." I placed my hand on her shoulder gently, as if touching a wound. "You know, I used to think that if I stayed silent, things would get better. But sometimes silence makes people think you're weak. That's why I had to leave." Vanessa nodded, her tears still flowing. In that moment, I realized the arrogant daughter-in-law of the past was no longer the same. She didn't make excuses or look for reasons. She was facing the truth, raw but necessary. Marcus walked in from the stairs, probably having heard us. When he saw me, he stopped his gaze, a mixture of surprise and relief. "Mom," he could only say one word before falling silent, his voice choked. He came over and hugged me tightly. "I'm sorry, Mom. I've been so thoughtless." I gently rubbed my son's back, feeling my heart beat steadily in his embrace. "It's okay, Marcus. You just forgot to look at the things closest to you." We sat down together without saying much. I let them tell me everything that had happened while I was away. Vanessa explained how the Christmas party had turned into a disaster, how the guests left frustrated, how Marcus was angry because she hadn't prepared anything properly, and how the two of them barely spoke after that. She confessed that at times she had thought of leaving, but when she saw the note I had left, she understood that some people only realize how valuable someone is once they lose them. I listened without interrupting. Her story was the result of everything I had silently planned, but I didn't feel triumphant. There was only a sense of relief, because in the end, the lesson had been fully learned. Finally, Vanessa looked up, her eyes swollen and red. "Mom, I don't dare ask for your forgiveness just yet, but if you allow me, I want to start over. I will prepare dinner tonight, not to make up for things, but to thank you." I looked at her, then gently nodded. "All right, but this time I'll just sit and watch." Vanessa smiled, the first smile she had shown after so many tiring days. She stood up, gathered her hair, and began cleaning the kitchen. Marcus helped her, and I sat in the corner watching them work. The smell of food gradually filled the air, mixing with their soft laughter. I felt warmth in my heart. When dinner was ready, Vanessa invited me to sit first. "Mom, try this. Did I cook like you?" I tasted the roast chicken. The flavor wasn't perfect yet, but I smiled. "It's very good," I said, "because you cooked it with all your heart." Marcus looked at both of us, his eyes as if he had just lifted a burden. "This family needs you, Gloria, not just to cook or clean, but to keep us together." I remained silent. Perhaps that was the first time they truly saw me, not as a servant, not as someone silently bearing everything, but as a mother, a woman of value. When the meal ended, Vanessa cleared the table, but this time she wouldn't let me touch anything. "Mom, take a rest. Let me handle it." Those words seemed simple, but to me, they were a gift. An apology, not wrapped in flowery words, but sincere to the core. That night, when I returned to my room, I opened the window and looked out at the small garden behind the house. The moonlight cast a silver glow over the trees. I took a deep breath, feeling the crispness of the night air. Downstairs, I could hear Vanessa and Marcus laughing softly. No more arguments, no more tension. I smiled. Not because of victory, but because peace had returned. Perhaps sometimes people must go through loss to understand how to cherish things. And I knew from that day on, the relationship between me and my daughter-in-law would never be the same. I whispered to myself before closing the door, "The lesson is over. Now we can begin again." Outside, the wind gently swayed the branches like a soft reply to the peace I had found and had brought back to this house. After that Christmas, the change in the relationship between Gloria and Vanessa was evident. Vanessa no longer treated her mother-in-law like a maid. Instead, she began showing care and respect. Every morning, she woke up earlier to help Gloria prepare breakfast, no longer making excessive demands or speaking condescendingly. She began cleaning the house alongside her mother-in-law, and gradually, Gloria noticed the change in her attitude. It wasn't just a superficial change driven by guilt, but rather a genuine realization on Vanessa's part of the hard work Gloria had put in over the years. Gloria didn't need an apology from Vanessa, nor did she require praise or gratitude. The only thing she wanted was respect, something she had deserved for so long. Gloria felt at peace, knowing that at last her daughter-in-law understood her value and began to appreciate the effort she had put into managing their home. She didn't care for grand gestures. What mattered was that respect was now present. Marcus, after seeing the events of Christmas unfold, began to realize that he had been too busy and hadn't paid enough attention to his mother. He started caring more for Gloria, no longer leaving everything to her, but taking the initiative to help out and listen to her more. Gloria felt a sense of relief because she no longer had to endure the loneliness within her own home. The recognition and respect from both Marcus and Vanessa was the greatest gift she could have received. That Christmas, more than just a family gathering, became a pivotal moment in Gloria's life. She had rediscovered her own worth and realized that she didn't need to live in anyone else's shadow. She deserved to be treated with respect, and it was this realization that brought her peace. Gloria saw that she wasn't the only one who could teach lessons about respect, but she felt content knowing she had shown Vanessa, Marcus, and herself that a mother, a grandmother, and a woman all have intrinsic value, and no one has the right to look down on them. Every day that passed, Gloria felt more peaceful in her home. Every family meal no longer felt like a burden solely on her, but rather a shared responsibility. Vanessa and Marcus learned that respect isn't just shown in words, but in actions. Small gestures like helping out with household chores or offering kind words transformed the atmosphere at home. The family no longer felt tense or strained, but instead there was warmth, genuine affection, and mutual understanding. Gloria felt she was finally living for herself. She was no longer the frail, overlooked mother in the eyes of her children, nor was she the one who was taken advantage of in her own home. She had rediscovered her inner strength. She knew that her life would never be the same again. She had learned the most important lesson of all: never abandon yourself for the sake of others, and always love and respect yourself first. In the years that followed, every Christmas, Gloria felt even more serene and at peace. She no longer felt abandoned or disrespected. For her, Christmas became more than just a family holiday. It was a day of awakening, a day of change, and a day of reclaiming herself. Every year she celebrated Christmas with Vanessa, Marcus, and the grandchildren. But what made it special was that each passing Christmas brought their family closer together, strengthening their bonds. And she knew that no matter how life changed, no matter how her children grew up and lived their own lives, she would always maintain her worth and never allow anyone to disrespect her again. Gloria had learned that respect starts with oneself, and that was the greatest lesson she would pass down to future generations.